My name is Lorne Lanning. I founded a company called Odd World Inhabitants, founded another new company called the Odd Mob. I'm here to bring about some wisdom from, on the right end of the stage here, we have Rick Boyko. And Rick has a long history in advertising, Chiat Day, Ogilvy and Mather, he used to run, Leo Burnett. These are some of the biggest ad agencies in the industry. A lot of experience there. In a semi-retirement role, he moved into seeing the need to facilitate greater education into the industries that he was very familiar with, and has wound up helping to shape the curriculums at the Virginia Commonwealth University, and also helping with TAD, the art department, to really take online art education to the next level. And that's Rick. And Jason Manley. Jason was a founder in Massive Black, you may be familiar with, also a founder in Concept Art, and has been helping the digital artist community globally get connected, get young talents connected with really high-level professional talents. It's been an amazing ecosystem of global connectivity that a lot of goodness has come out of, and we'll learn more about Jason's role today. And TAD, Jason's instrumental in setting up TAD, which is the art department, which will be a whole nother online level, brick and mortar meets online and going global. And then we have Jaclyn Havlak, and Jackie comes from a history in entertainment. She was a communications major originally. She has her own radio show on 101X here in Austin. It's called Hypersonic.
Well, I'm part of a team of people that's on the radio.
A team.
Yes, we have a crew.
And humble. And she's also the executive producer at TAD. She started off as the marketing director, and TAD is modeling more in the familiarity of how production happens in the world. And so we have these people here today, and the assumption is that more of you are looking at how to find the best ways to nurture skills into more appropriate places where you actually make money doing what you want to do. Is that true?
Nobody wants to make money.
Okay.
Companies and probably some. How many of y'all are professionals, if I may ask? Okay, that's good. Good.
How many are looking to shift careers? A couple.
Your boss isn't here.
It's Phil Holland. That's funny. So we thought we'd start off today just with a sort of roundup on where things are going and why they're moving that way, and why new schools like TAD are emerging in the way they are, why people like Rick Boyko went and decided that there needs to be better understandings in the educational system to condition people for the opportunities that exist more in the advertising frontier. And that landscape is not going away. That is only getting bigger with time. And so to start this off, let's start with Jason. Why are you guys setting up TAD?
It's pretty simple. If you are a creative person, you want to go to art school, you pay $100,000+ and get a very small portion of the information, which I'm fully aware of because I did it. And then I got out and got into the industry and realized I didn't have the skills that I needed. And then I built, after years working in the games industry, I built my own company, a global production group called Massive Black, that services most of the games and entertainment industry and the art production side. And I couldn't hire people out of school. They weren't ready. I even tried hiring art school faculty to do the work, and they weren't there. So I realized that the students were, the cost to entry, the barrier to entry to art school is so big that most artists can't afford it, and that the information is outdated. And so we wanted to take that information from the best art faculty possible and broadcast it to the world and make it available for anybody that could earn it or afford it.
Great. Rick, when you were, let's say, running Ogilvy, which is, how many people does that, I don't know how many are familiar with Ogilvy and Mather, but it's one of the giants in the advertising business. How many people were working?
Well, and I ran only North America. I was co-president, chief creative officer and co-president of Ogilvy North America, and there were about, I would say, 2,500 employees in 5 different offices at Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Toronto, Montreal.
We were talking earlier, and you covered the whole spectrum creatively: print, radio, television, and ancillaries, of course.
Obviously, digital is a huge part of that now, online and digital and direct marketing, PR. We had all those different aspects at the agency.
So what did you see that was missing that made you want to step more into education and help shape it for the industry?
Well, it was interesting. I agree with Jason that as my job as head of Ogilvy was, as I described it, chief talent officer. So my job was to go around the country, speak at schools, try to make people aware of our agency. And as advertising as a to a lot of art students a viable career, and what I was finding as I went out was that it was not that many, and seeing portfolios of students trying to get in to our agency, the portfolios were usually lacking quite a bit. And so one of the schools I went to speak at was in Virginia, called Virginia Commonwealth University. At that time, it was named the Ad Center. And I was asked to join the board, and really got involved with the young people. Found it very engaging, and the opportunity to help shape the people coming into the business and have them understand a bigger aspect of what was going to entail. I got involved with it, and then after 2001, after 9/11. I decided it was probably time to maybe do something different, and had the opportunity to take on the directorship of that school, which at the time was 6 years old. And I've been with it for almost 9 years now, and it's been a lot of fun.
It's also viewed as sort of a revolutionary undertaking that you...
Yeah, what's different about the school, and what I think Jason and Tad and we've been sort of working together, and they looked at our model and said, we like what you've done, because our model is somewhat entrepreneurial within the university. It was set up very entrepreneurially by the president of the university at that time. And our faculty are all professionals who had good careers in the business and wanted to give back. So we have 11 full-time faculty with 180 cumulative years in the business that we teach. So we are not traditional academicians, and it's a 2-year graduate program, and it's set up quite uniquely that way. So we're somewhat outside the regular academic environs, and the school is pretty uniquely designed. It was designed by an architect named Clive Wilkinson, who's done Google, who's done many agencies, and he came in, and it's all open architecture, very collaborative in its mindset.
Nice. And you came out of, you never thought you'd be getting into art education?
No, definitely not. I don't know if my mic is on.
Hello?
No, I definitely didn't, actually. I never saw myself in necessarily the creative field. I was more of an analytical person. I still am. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of got asked to do something, and I tried it, and apparently it was really great. And then they just kept giving me more things to do, so I ended up being a creative instead of directing creatives. And now I'm in directing creatives, but when I started out, I definitely didn't think I was going to.
And it's exciting with the landscape. I'm looking at I'm looking at the migration. We all went to school in brick and mortar, Art Center, Ringling, Illustration Academy, School of Visual Arts, Cal Arts,
Texas State
University, and in a lot of ways, what that meant was that wherever we were, we had to pay to get to, because we had to live at that facility. Whether it was campus or a city. There was a lot of association with what we call brick or mortar, right? So there's a lot of costs associated with being somewhere. And today, the economy's tougher. People have a harder time. But at the same time, we have something that didn't exist when we were all in school, and that's we're connected. We're globally connected. So what we see happening is more and more people around the world getting access that didn't used to exist, because they didn't used to be able to necessarily afford or have the means to be in a location where you could be around great talents that would inspire you. And that's changing. It's changing tremendously. I advise a couple different schools myself, San Francisco Academy of Art University, USC Game Labs, and various ventures here and there, just helping out where I can. But the massive shift that we're seeing is how young people are getting more enabled to get access to talent, and also more enabled to launch new business opportunities as individuals that in many ways didn't exist when we were kids, and by the age group here, I guess a lot of you also went through a similar transition of having gone to physical schools and now looking more at virtual schools, virtual classes, what those things offer, et cetera. And that landscape is changing tremendously. So
I think it's like that in general. I mean, everything is accessible via the internet now.
Yeah. How many people here are looking at starting their own businesses or own their own businesses? Starting and own? Yeah. So, and everything, one of the things that is highly taught today, we were, just to speak for a second to a group of advisors, 4 out of the 5 people in the room of these advisors were multi-Academy Award winners, whether in visual effects or technology, and all of them in the last 4 years were at the top of their game and have had to reinvent who they are and what they do. And one of the things that leads to is teaching not just a certain set of skills, which is critical, but how to change in your skills, how to adapt to the rapidly changing times. And that's something where, Rick, I'm going to go to you because you've seen a lot of changes. I mean, when you started in the ad business, there wasn't an online. People had no idea what www meant, right? There was 3 networks.
It was a wrestling association.
Yeah. So what were these changes, what do they really mean that people should be paying attention to today for what they mean as it applies to education as we look forward tomorrow?
I think, obviously everything's changing, as we all know, at a pace that's much more rapid than I think anybody really anticipated even 10 years ago. And so the opportunity to continue to learn is something that we all have to just be aware of and be sponges and never sit back and say, okay, I know everything and therefore I don't have to continue to learn. In fact, our sort of mission statement at the Brandcenter is to help the industry, the marketing and advertising industry, embrace and navigate change because it has just become so rapid and so insistent that people understand how to embrace change because it's against nature usually to want to change because you get comfortable and you sort of get in your routines and you feel safe and therefore you don't want to venture into a space that has that. So in education, I think the opportunity that is arrived now with the opportunity to really take on classes online, it gives you freedom to take on things that you wouldn't ordinarily do. As you said, you don't have to be stuck in bricks and mortar school to learn a lot more now.
I think the same could be said for what you're actually creating, because if you can create something that tends to be more organic and can change and fluidly with what the environment that it's changing in, then you're also going to benefit, because before when we were learning to design, we were designing things for print. And nowadays, it's kind of like, many people kind of think that's kind of a waste of time, a waste of money, no one really cares about that. I mean, I do because, I still think it's wonderful. But, the value of it is changing really quickly. So learning to produce things that are organic like that is probably going to be just as beneficial as you being organic.
Yeah. And do you want to comment on that?
I want to comment on that in sort of a different angle in that those of you that have companies now or those of you that are students or looking to change careers, any of that, you're just looking to climb up within your company, you have to devote a significant portion of your time, and I would even put as much as 20% of your time towards looking and researching new directions. When the way I look at it is I have this base skill set that I picked up from a group of creatives in the industry and at the Illustration Academy, and I used that skill set to enter the video games industry and create. I picked up more skills there and realized I could actually probably run a business. And then I built Massive Black, and that I started to feel like I met all my goals with that company, and I wanted to have 200 clients, and I after 8 years I had very close 180 something clients, and at that point it felt like it wasn't quite as easy for me to push new directions with with the industry, that particular industry. So with that, on the production side, so the company does great, but I look at it as, how can I go and do something that has a major impact now? We had our impact there, so I started focusing more on education as a person that is creating companies as an entrepreneur, and it's the same skill set that I used for the other things applied to this, of finding the best people, nurturing culture, dealing with all the little things it takes to set up companies, the same things it takes to develop ideas for making pictures or content and design. It's all the same kind of thought process. And if you're constantly learning and chasing after those new things and keeping yourself inundated, surrounded with that information, what happens is you're going to be sitting there and chocolate and peanut butter. The mind will just grab it. You'll have the ideas. Every single one of my businesses, everything that they do in all of their things, all came from research and just digging around because I was always interested, always continuing my own education, finding people to listen to and learn from. And if you do that, even if that's your company doing that, as soon as you get steady, as soon as it's you go to work and it's a paycheck and you come home, you're dead in the water. And the same thing goes for your company. You're dead in the water at that point. You've got to be pushing.
What do they call it? As soon as you find your comfort zone, you're dead. Yeah. How many? So by the age I see, mostly 30-something, some 40-something, some 50-something. How many people have changed careers already in this audience? Okay. Now, when we were kids, right, our parents probably didn't throughout their whole time. Right? I started as a painter. I started as a photorealist illustrator, and I thought that was going to be my life. And then I saw computer animation, 3D, back in the 80s, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be homeless because this is going to be the future. And I got scared and moved to California, and then I went back and studied animation. And then I got in and I became a modeler, and then I became an animator, and then I became an art director, and then eventually I became a visual effects supervisor. And then I was like, okay, well, this is all interesting, but where's it going? And then I was paying attention to chips and processing and all this, and saw that video games looked like they were on the wall. Started a game company in '94, then realized the whole landscape of how that business is changing. Started an online company in 2010. It's a whole different spectrum. But it just goes to that I worked with a lot of people at every different stage of that career, and there are still people who are sort of stuck in those different stages because the skills that they weren't jumping onto was the skill to adapt, right, and getting access to easily available information. And today there's really no excuses for not having access to the information that you need to do whatever it is that you need to do, or to open doors that really in the past you needed a plane ticket or a relentless speed dial on your phone to try and keep knocking on doors and open up information. But today it's all accessible, and that's changing a lot of things. I mean, that's what I came here to talk to moderate this because of what they were setting up with TAD, because of the previous experiences of how they had been associated with schools that were brick and mortar, revolutionized those in different ways. How these guys brought a lot of the global artist community together with concept art, what was happening, and how that started connecting talents with no hope in the world. When you started looking at kids coming online in China, in Asia, in different places, in India, where all that they really had was a connection to get out to the world. Now we're seeing those are some of the brightest, best talents emerging. So this whole idea of where are you in the world at one time, if we go back to the middle of the 20th century, if you weren't at the Bauhaus or if you weren't in Paris at certain times, you weren't at the center of where things were happening. Or if you weren't in New York City at a certain time, you weren't at the center of where things are happening. Today, you're at the center of where things are happening if you think to be there, because you can arrive there no matter where you're sitting in the world. And that's something where that landscape has changed tremendously. So, like in radio, Jackie, your 2 cents, yeah.
Before I say anything about the radio, actually, is this? Okay. All right, sorry. Almost half of our students are not from the United States. And, we have students that are from places that, like Kazakhstan, they have no access to any education on this level, much less fine art education, period. So they are probably our brightest students because they're so hungry for something that they never even would have had a taste of had they had to be in that place. And I think that's the one thing, about this global environment that we all know, that everything is so much more accessible, and it's just about kind of trying to filter and trying to find the quality. And so, I feel like when I aligned with Jason, I was aligning with history and, research and experience with people that were just hungry. And they just wanted to find it, and they were going out and trying to find it, and they found it in the only place it existed in the world ever until recently, which is conceptart.org, and they just wanted to meet each other, and they wanted to see what everybody was doing, and they wanted to see what that guy overseas they never would have seen was doing. They don't have television, they don't have cable, they don't know anything about what we're doing here, except, wow, I just want to be cool and making money, doing something fantastic, and I can draw. And they didn't even realize that it could be so much further beyond I can draw.
And then we have, I think touching on a really critical issue is how people are perceived. Right? Let me just touch on that, because a lot of people come out of schools and we witness a lot of different flavors in the workplace. We witness people coming out with different perspectives. One that we see frequently is I know everything. Right? The I know-it-all perspective. That's the hardest to get traction with. Right? And the other is I don't know anything, and I'm so happy and humble to be here that I'll sweep the floors if I have to. That's the one we're most interested in, usually, as employers, right? And those of you who employ, it's like the people that are really hungry versus the people that that sort of hold back as though there's a great wealth of value here that you're just not really understanding yet. Rick, you've seen a lot of things. What do you see in terms of perspectives, and what's the most important thing that young people should be tailoring in how they behave? Aside from the skills, the human skills.
Yeah, I think that the best human skills are two things. One, humility, and we try to tell every student that leaves the Brandcenter that they have to remain humble, because even though they've gone through a program that, by the industry standards is ranked one of the best in the country, they still have to remain humble, and they have to learn that as they go out, they're going to continue to evolve, the business is going to continue to evolve. And the other is to stay curious, and I think it was something that Jason tapped on. And I think, it really is an imperative today to always remain curious, no matter what you're doing, no matter what level. Curiosity, and as soon as you do get into sort of a rhythm and become a bit comfortable, you stop becoming curious, and your curiosity has to remain that way. And one of the things leaving the business, when I did, after 30 years, people were questioning why I was sort of leaving at the position I was and wasn't going to stay around. I said, because I was actually getting too comfortable. And I wanted to, and students have just made me that much more curious. They've brought me to a whole different level. If I had stayed in the business for the last 9 years, I would have never grown as much as I've grown being around the students.
Jason, you... with concept art, does somebody? I imagine most of you here that have businesses or building businesses, they have online components. Is that correct? Yeah.
Is that a rhetorical question?
So that's South by Southwest. Okay, but you never know. But the point that I want to point out is you guys out of basically San Francisco created a global community. How many people started coming to that? I mean, how many you created in some ways? I would say Massive Black was born out of concept art, and then the flagship that Massive Black became a gravitational pull for concept art, and then that pulled in people from around the world. How many people?
Well, we pull, I don't know what the total is to date, but I mean, we're not doing Facebook numbers or something like. It's a very niche art community focused on the entertainment industry. But we do about 100 million page views a year on about 9 to 10 million uniques a year. So it's a niche community.
So imagine, like how many of us have ever seen 10 million people standing in one place, right? I saw it once, I think, at a New York City New Year's Eve event, and it was just nuts, right? That's more bodies than fit in any Super Bowl stadium on planet Earth, right? But that can happen out of someone's bedroom, right? We see kids recording their lip sync video out of a bedroom in Brooklyn, and they're getting 28 million hits because they have found their audience. And really, I have to go out occasionally, raise venture capital to launch new companies, convince people why what we're doing is worth their money, because that's really, at the end of the day, that's all they really care about, is how they're going to make money. We care about different things, but we have to have that argument very much together. And the question is always, who's your audience? You know, and whether it's a business that you're running or whether you're an individual artist. Jason's had me to talk at some of the concept art workshops, and it's always about you are your own brand. Like in the future, people are their own brand more and more and more. So when I look out here and I see such a diverse set of possibilities, you know, I clearly can see in the faces of people that there are different interests in different directions, and there's such a wide body of knowledge here that in some ways I want to ask, are there questions that people would like answered specifically to needs or issues or concerns that we might be able to shed light on and use more of that time to aim more towards things that we might answer of immediate problems of yours? Is that something you guys would want to head towards? Are there questions out there? There's one. Are there more? I'm taking votes now. It's a poll. Okay,
I've gone to many of these sessions over the past 2 days, and I have not seen too much interaction. I'd love to have this one be more informative to answer questions that you have rather than us speaking at you. So,
how many, those of you that are business owners, how many of you are facing a problem right now that you're trying to overcome, that you're not able to overcome, you haven't been able to overcome? Now's the time to ask a couple of those questions.
There's a mic.
Even if you generalize them.
Yeah, let's go to the mic so other people can hear that.
May I?
Yeah.
Please.
I totally embrace the fact that I've got 100 problems every day, and finding solutions is the fun of it all. But I work very closely with some artists who I believe are deeply talented, and some of them are very cynical about art school environments. They've been accepted to every school when they were younger, and they're now kind of 35, two in particular. And I'm wondering if this new online art education, like universe of online art education, is going to help these creatives kind of come out of their shell and defeat that cynicism.
That's exactly
what we're doing.
Okay, cool.
Even the faculty, even the professional artists out there are done with it. They're frustrated with it. They want change, and they want it done right.
Let me preface something first, because we don't want to. There are good schools that are brick and mortar, right? So just to say, I witnessed something happen over the years, which is as a new medium comes about, computer animation, video games, online web design, whatever. What happens is these universities are all businesses. And as businesses, they see that in new sectors. They see new student bodies wanting to major in those courses. And so they see it as a business. And all of these schools try and grow. A lot of them are follow-me's.
Right, there's a process.
So there's a lot of places that will take your money. There are schools that are really good. So it's really, in many ways, up to the audience to do more homework, which you have easy access to with the web, and find out the wheat from the chaff. But that said, getting to the online answer, I wanted to preface with, they're not all, just trying to make money. Absolutely. They're out there. But to your answers.
Well, one question. There's two things. I've broken up art curriculum to downloadable, live streaming, on-demand, full college education, workshop 4 days, summer workshops, professionals-only courses that are 4 and 8 weeks. But the information, the key is, I think, and it's the key for anybody that's learning, you need to be getting great information from the people that know it, that really did it, that didn't just study it, actually did it, or are doing it right now, combined with their own work ethic. To push and get that. If we can deliver that information, the student has to grab it and grow. The cool thing about, if they're professionals now and they're working, the cool thing about it is the online stuff that we're doing. Most of the online art schools you're just like PDF based. You do email chat, stuff like that. I can paint inside their Photoshop if they're in. I did it with someone in Malaysia 2 days ago. And they were on a Mac, and I was on a PC.
And it's real time.
Yeah. So I can directly work with people all over the world, and so can all of our faculty. So if there's a variety of options for them, and there's great teachers and classes, and if they're in another field, that's business or the like, there's got to be, appropriate professionals that are participating in this kind of thing. I know the entrepreneurial space has pushed the online education component too, but you can find it. You can really find it and pick up a lot of good ideas.
There's been a number of people that Bobby Cho, character designer. I don't know if you know. Bobby's, probably in my opinion, one of the best, hands down, in the world. Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. He's always working on movies and stuff. But Bobby was in his university, and he was saying, I think the kids need to learn, blah, blah, blah. And at the same time, he had this thing going called Imaginism Studios. And Imaginism became like a class. Imaginism was like a school for them. And schoolism, they started calling it. And as he was complaining about that, like your artist, as he was complaining about those things, I said, Bobby, why aren't you just building it more of what you want? And he's like, I'm like, Bobby, you've already got a global audience. And he embraced that more rather than trying to struggle with existing institutions that didn't see the future or the contemporary space the way he did, and he just focused more on that school. So he'd go on to Ustream and just start broadcasting a live drawing and just see who would show up, and then people start showing up more and more and more. So the ability that any one of us could have been in a class with Bobby teaching character design, and he lives in Canada, is pretty slim and none. But the ability for us to find out who the character designer we would like to learn from today, do they offer anything that's online, and being able to interface directly with them from anywhere in the world, that is a radical shift in opportunity. So the cynicisms are understandable in terms of the history, but really today, with where things are going and the accessibility that people have to information, there's no excuse to not find what you want. And the operations, like whether it's with the University at Virginia or whether it's the online schools, it's getting harder for them to have to distinguish themselves. So they have to have better offerings so that they're still bringing in people, and those people are being placed. In the case of the Virginia Commonwealth University, that's a 98% job placement. So you're looking at, do I want a job? And then certain schools are going to not have anywhere near that sort of record of performance. But if they're doing that type of a performance, it's because they're supplying something that industries want.
And that's, just to clarify, that's with the Brandcenter.
The Brandcenter.
While we're part of VCU, I can't say that the entire university has that kind of placement, but we have it's a 2-year graduate program. We graduate 100 students a year, and we have a 98% placement rate by the end of the first year. Usually, before school's out, 50% of the students have jobs in the marketing and advertising industry.
And then thank you, and thanks for that clarity, and that's what I was definitely speaking to. More issues with businesses that you're building.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm an illustrator, and I used to have a lot of hair. But I also used to have a corner on a corporate market, conceptual illustration, and back in the 80s, I was one of the first people to exploit this market.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Richard A. Goldberg.
Go on. I remember seeing your work in the Society of Illustrators.
Yeah. Anyhow, my colleagues and I in the same market, my age group, are in a declining print market. It has been declining for a long time. We're all looking to fix that somehow. We're all trying different things, creating our own art, our own product illustration, switch plates, whatever. We're all scrambling to try to make up for what was once a very lucrative living, with global competition and very qualified art students being...
I know what you need, definitely.
Excuse me?
You just need a Wacom and a stylus.
Oh, well, we have those. Yeah. I mean, I'm learning 3D. I'm learning Blender.
Are you looking for some direction on problem solving to a solution there?
I don't know if I don't know if there's any. Yes, we're looking all.
Here's what I would say is, in Rick, I assume you would take a similar train with me on this, which is what you have is experience that in a lot of ways is not being taught. And you know this. You know this as an illustrator who's dealt with clients for a long time, who's solving very specific sets of problems that just because someone understands Photoshop, they don't have a clue about those problems that you know how to solve. What's happening I watched the whole 2D Disney school get lost for those who didn't want to adapt, and now they can't get jobs, right? In the beginning, they said, this new medium, it's no threat, it'll never replace ours, and now they can't work. Those who adapt, they're called John Lasseter, right? So adapting can put you on the top. And the knowledge that you have is really valuable. The speed at which it gets output, the way that you market yourself, those things have to be readapted to the new landscape. So print, here's print today, right? Print, it's the iPad is opening up more of a language of how traditional composition, illustration, communication languages are finding their way into more multimedia devices, right? And so how you're presenting yourself, like back when you guys were doing illustration, you had a rep probably in a few different cities. You were paying for pages in books that would be annuals to get exposures that went out to the advertising agencies. You would do whatever you could to market yourself on that landscape. And really, what are you doing to market yourselves on this new landscape, making it easily accessible through a WW carriage hit return? What are the outlets that are getting you visibility to the parties who are engaging more of those spaces? It's really, I think, more of a marketing issue today.
Well, ironically, I missed the workshop because I got stuck in a shuttle. There was a parade, and my shuttle is stuck in traffic at 12:30 at the same time. Yeah. There was an illustrator. I can't remember his name, but he had like a how to, become a successful artist. It was more of a cartoonist, So he had, he had the most successful blog around. I'm trying to remember the name of his blog, but anyhow, yes, it's true. The new media does offer a lot of access and.
I'll give you an example. Illustrators are some of the best visual storytellers there are, period, especially when you look across the last 35, 40 years of fine art, right? You compare the two, the storytellers are in illustration and animation, starting to move into video games, film, even some, yes. Right? But so, for example, look at how people are consuming media. Marvel makes their comics, but they make online comics that are you can click through, and they have sound effects and music, and the camera pans across the illustration. Movies now will put out trailers that are all illustrated. Essentially, it's illustrations inside Adobe to get explosions or animations or lighting effects or whatever it is to just make it more dynamic, right? It's no longer just print. If you're going to put out a book, you need to be in digital. You need to have it be able to check where they can rent the book for 30 days. They could get the book for 5 days. It's less. They could buy the book, keep it forever digitally, or they could get the hard book, right? So you got to look and see how content is being distributed, and then you have to ask yourself, what content could I make really affordably? Because if you look at it, I'm going to make this giant series of, it's going to become movies, then it's already, and Lorne and I have been having this conversation, it's
That's
already
really
too big.
More like creation, IP creation, as opposed to fulfilling a need in the marketplace for clients.
Yeah, and I have something
Rick,
to add on to what you guys are talking about. You're talking about what you need to maybe do to supplement, and I don't know if this is something that you've taken into consideration, but I know that perhaps when you were starting as an illustrator, you might not have, oftentimes your art precedes you. Many times people don't know your name or know who you are. They just know your work, which is not a bad thing. But nowadays, if they know who you are, then they'll know your work. Or if they know your work, they'll follow you and find out who you are, and then just find out where you're doing more work. So personal branding, which we kind of touched on it earlier, and that's kind of something that I've definitely embraced from the wee little 3-year-old me. I always felt like it was really important for people to know who I was and what I was doing, no matter what it was. And I'm on the radio, and really, I don't want to be on the radio necessarily. That was never something that I thought I was going to do. I was giving a friend of mine who produced the show some advice and saying, you really need a female voice. You need to talk about art. It's an electronic music show. So, I was like, no one cares about what's going on in the clubs. They just want to hear the music. So if you want people to talk, you need to get a perspective of creative. So that's what I started doing. And because of that, people know about this. And because of this, people know about that. So, it's just getting yourself out there now, I think. And because of the internet and all of these things that we're doing, yes, you have the ability to access information, but you also have the ability to put out information. And, you have a responsibility, just like we do, to make sure that you're putting out something that is valuable.
Sure.
And hopefully, there's a lot of people that don't, so you have to learn how to hone it. But really, you are the creator of whatever it is that you want people to see or think when they see or think about you.
Well, thank you. One last question. I don't want to take all the time here, but with that in mind, do you recommend all the networks? Facebook, tweeting.
Well, it just depends on what kind of an image or a personality that you want to project. I mean, if you want to be taken. It kind of depends on who you're speaking to. It depends on how you want to speak to them, and it depends on how you want them to perceive you. Because, yes, everyone is doing that now, but at the same time, everyone is doing that now. So are you just trying to get your name out there anywhere you possibly can? Or are you actually taking the time to investigate which of those networks are going to be the most valuable? Which of those have the place that the people you want to talk to are really flocking to?
That's the key.
Yeah. Right. And it's a connected world, right? So the things like Facebook or the things like Twitter, really that's connective tissue that everyone's utilizing. So it's kind of like, are we going to utilize the web or not, right? You're going to utilize Facebook. You're going to utilize Twitter. You need to. I don't care what business you're in, right? The key then is, why? Well, 600 million bodies on Facebook. How many communities that are in the millions on Facebook? So there are communities of artists that keep in touch through events through Facebook. So all of those are connective tissue to other similar minds. And that's a way to think about it. No matter what, you have to have what we call a landing site. You have to have a place that is your own, whether it's a formatted, template, landing site, whatever, where your portfolio is a few keystrokes away from anyone on the planet who's connected, who has an interest. And that's so much of what it's about, putting yourself available a few keystrokes away. The next level is, so you have to have that, your landing site. Then, how are you bringing people to that, right? And that's the harder question, is why do they want to go there, and how did you get in their mind's eye to begin with?
Do you remember those?
You have to embrace all of these things.
Participation in online communities is really key.
Do you remember those web rings? Like when web first kind of, everybody had those pages and everyone would like link back to link back to link back, and you'd go to someone's page and they'd have a list of all their friends and that's how you ended up finding, I like that one better, and you'd end up finding that. It's great. Now we have that, just everyone has it with themselves.
Next question.
Hey, I'm pretty excited to have a chance to ask you all this question. It is about weird career paths. I was working as a video game artist early in my career in the mid-'90s, and then I moved over to being a technical animator doing real-time web 3D, and did a lot of stuff as a generalist. And kind of halfway through my career, I got a great job and a great salary and was doing something really innovative. And I came in, and my new art director said, "You suck." Like and those were his words. It's like, "You're awful." And and I said, "Thank you. May I have another?" Yeah. And I went back to life drawing for 3 years solid, and just drew my brains out. And he continues to be a friend many years later, and a colleague, and we trade responses. He's also a guy that has a weird career path. He's done art director for video games. He's been a technical director on big AAA titles, and has a strange career path. My question to y'all is do you feel like somebody has to get in, do a curriculum, matriculate, have a hyper focus, or do you see people that are doing art at a high level, at a quality level, who do other stuff, who might animate, who might...
I can answer that. It depends on... Some of these arts are very particular. Like traditional animation is very particular, and that's almost its own life pursuit. There's a handful of artists in the industry that can do a variety of things. One of my early partners in Massa Black was a guy named Petey Koenig, who could concept, model, texture, and animate. The only thing he didn't do well was rigging. But everything else he did at world-class levels. Plus, he could sculpt in clay and any other material. Yeah. But that's all he did. It was work.
Yeah, and it also depends very much on where you want to end up.
Where you want to go, yeah.
Because if you let's say you want to be an art director at an ad agency, right? You need to be wide. I mean, your understanding needs to be very wide. If you want to be working at a visual effects company like ILM or Rhythm and Hues or one of these big, your focus is going to be extremely narrow, right? I had people working for me that were unbelievable CG generalists. I don't know if any of you saw the game like Stranger's Wrath or something. Those movies were done by 3 guys. All of the CG movies were done by 3 people. And that meant they were wide generalists. There was painters who were implementing their own 3D, implementing their own 2.5D map paintings, et cetera, on down the line. And when we closed that shop up, I called some people at DreamWorks and said, this guy would like to work for you, and you should hire him. And they were like, well, what does he do? And I said, this. And they're like, well, he's not specialized enough for us. So I don't want to hire specialized guys. I just want to hire generalist guys. But that means you're going to want to be closer to small companies. They have harder struggles. That's
the issue, right? Because today there's a lot of entrepreneurial app makers. There's a lot of these new venues to create content, which are small. You got to have a small footprint. And you kind of have to be a generalist.
And they're more agile. Agile is the real buzzword today, right? And agile means really what? That we adapt rapidly, we learn quickly, and we re-implement immediately.
Change immediately.
I think that there's something to be said, too, for, just taking risks in places where you feel like, yes, maybe you're not good at something, but can you become good at it? I mean, if you can, which, I'm the same. I went to school majored in advertising, hoping to be a strategic planner. Certainly saw myself as a creative individual within myself, but, I enjoyed coloring and whatnot. I wasn't too bad, but it's never something I thought I'd be doing as a career. I minored in design because I felt like as a strategic planner, I should be able to understand every aspect, and that was the one I was least familiar with. My minor, 6 months before I graduated, I was offered a job as an art director at a marketing company just because I'd done a couple of logos that were better than their art director who just quit. And I said, okay. Chaos. And I did it, and I was petrified, and it was lots of chaos, actually, and I went from that, and then I lost that job because we got laid off, and I was looking for a job, and there was a new television network starting, and they said they're looking for a designer that's really good with branding, and I just happened to be good at logos somehow, and I went there, and they said, have you ever done this before? And I said, no, and they said, oh, well, we really like your portfolio, come back in a week. And I came back in a week, and I had sat with the After Effects Bible and made this really crude 30-second thing. And they were like, you did this in a week? And I said, yeah, I'm sorry. It's really awful. I probably shouldn't have shown it. And they were like, oh, no, of course, that's fine. You've got two weeks, and we're going to be on air, and you have to get everything done. And I figured it out. It wasn't easy, but I figured it out. It's a little bit different from the fake it till you make it. Just kind of like, I'm going to do everything I can to figure out how to do this and do it well. And if you just have that perspective, it doesn't really matter what you do.
Let me ask you a question. How many people lied their way into their first job? Rick, you didn't?
No.
Oh, wow. Jason,
Rick has never lied about anything in his life.
I got in by telling him I would do anything. I'm moving there whether you hire me or not. You will hire me eventually. And they hired me, and I painted dirt for 2 months.
Maybe that's why, actually, I'm still sitting here now. I think I said something similar to Jason like that because he wanted me to model for him. I used to do that for fun, too. Yeah, That's great.
We got a line of questions.
Thanks.
So we're going to go next question, please. Thank you.
Hello. My question refers to responsibility as educators, and I went to a program that really didn't produce valuable skills in the market, but their focus was, I'm going to teach you how to be an art director 20 years down the road. So I learned how to set type on a 1950s Vandercook press, and then I filled in Maya, After Effects, all that on my own, and developed an aesthetic. But my question is about education. It's a hot commodity to be able to paint a certain way or to do a certain skill. And what's your goal to get those people's jobs immediately and get them jobs down the road and teach them how to adapt? So
That's easy to answer.
Okay.
Nearly every art director in the entertainment industry is on conceptart.org every month. Thousands of them. Almost every company in the industry is on there hiring, they're on there looking. It's the primary place for that type of resource. If you want 3D right now, there's a smaller community on there, and they do get hired out of there. I've hired out of there. I know a number of companies that have, but you go to CG Society, and that's where you. So, but if a community, if an art school comes from the base of a community, we can put our students out. We have leaderboards for TAD going up on top of the new conceptart.org, so that the TAD students can be shown and showcased for all their hard work. And, I've had, our school is right over here, right out the doors. And in the past semester, I had more than 100 companies come through those doors. So it's a different, when the industry is doing it, I mean, the people that are doing it, they know the other people that are doing it, and so I can get the right people in. You know,
you want to work with people that are really on that front line, you know, and however you can connect to them, and that's part of the beauty of the landscape today, right? Is you can find those connections. Sometimes they have a small entry fee, and sometimes, you know, you get that return to email, ping, whatever it is today.
I got one last point because it was kind of a broader question, and it's how are we approaching it in the system? To what are we offering? Are we making people be able to concept just like so and so they can go get a job at this particular company?
Like, what's your responsibility?
My responsibility is to
industry?
give them the base skill set that they need to create in a variety of different fields. Because if all you do is concept art, well, then what happens if you get laid off? Well, if at TAD you can learn, you get fine art, you get illustration, you get business, you get marketing, you get promotions, you get all the business documents, the legal agreements. You learn to negotiate. You get all the company agreements you need to set up your own business. You get to go over and understand all the problems that small companies have when you get started, so that when you go out to do this stuff, not only that, but you learn how the business development is done in the industry right now. Yeah. So if you know that, you can go out and do it. It's only up to you to do it. That's what I mean about getting the info.
To add to that, I went to school at the School of Visual Arts back in the 80s, and I went there because it was their whole model was real professionals teaching part-time. And that was really interesting to me because I didn't want to know from the guy who knew it 10 years ago, or I didn't want to know from the guy who never had been. I wanted the people to learn from that were the it now. And so whatever, as they're identifying, you know, when we went to school, they said the most valuable relationships you'll probably ever have in your career are around you now in this body, right? Except now this body is non-geographical. It's connected online. So the question is, how far are you reaching and to who? And when I look at it as a skill level, as a job placement, it's one thing. But it's also, if you're teaching and a student has an individual pursuit, let's say it's Andrew Jones, you know, if you're familiar with Andrew Jones' work, you know, that's such a hot sort of, I just want to do what I want to do, so you're just facilitating that so they can help to be great at what they do. Mm-hmm. And that's a rare breed that really becomes, you know, incredibly performing.
I mean, this guy went to art school with me, studied animation, came out, couldn't paint but could draw real well because he had to do a lot of concept art. Got in, worked at ILM for a short period of time, jumped to Black Isle with me, then Nintendo, learned to do concept art really well, was doing a whole ton of self-portrait work, and one day we were having a show at the Austin workshop, and I told him that, you know, you're the only one that's got the to get up on stage with the band and paint live. And he's like, I can do that. And he was up there rocking it as a digital painter on the stage, and now he performs in front of crowds 40,000 big just from his own push and reach out into the world. And this week, right now, he's at Sydney painting on the Sydney Opera House with the orchestra.
So it's a good example of someone created their own market because they were that intense about what they wanted to do, even though they weren't sure where that was going to land them. So as a school that's going to facilitate an individual like that, he's less concerned about a job placement. He's more concerned with a place in history, you know. And so ideally, you can help both interests.
Yes, thank you. So education is about self-propelment for your.
You are your own brand, right?
Yeah.
And that's the future. You are your own IP. You are your own brand. And how are you presenting yourself to the rest of the world? And this is, when I give talks to the artist communities, I oftentimes put up a picture of a oil palette, right, with different colors. And I go, what's the most important color to the artist in the 21st century? Green. Right? If you don't understand how to market, how you're going to make income, how you're going to do these things, it's a different landscape today. The idea of the tormented artist who lives in his studio and just is like brilliant, you know, that's gone, man, because there's someone just as brilliant who knows how to connect and communicate, yep. And he's going to smoke you.
One of the things I just add to that, you know, at our school, we're all about brands, you know, and creating communications for brands. But one of the things we start with is the brand you. It is, you know, you have to understand as you come out of any program that you are an individual. You want your own brand to be unique. And so we try to make sure that students aren't trying to come out stamped out of a program that is, has a philosophy. The philosophy is about, you and what you stand for and what you believe in. All we can do as educators is try to give you the right tools to make sure that you understand how to take what you have inherently in you and move that forward. So you have to have the confidence in yourself, first and foremost, to be able to do that.
Yeah, gone are the days of hiding behind your paintbrushes.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Next question, please.
Actually, I don't have a question so much as want to make a point. I'm Alice Myatt, and I'm with the National Endowment for the Arts. And I wanted to, number one, ask you to remember the nonprofit sector. And the nonprofit sector needs an aesthetic.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you know what? I'd like you to elaborate on that, because you touch on a really interesting area. And I think in my experience, my personal experience, and what I experience with a lot of people today is we're just concerned with making a living, right? With not being homeless. I mean, just really bringing it home. But you're identifying that there are other opportunities.
Absolutely.
And so I'd like to hear more.
There is funding available, not just, government funding is one thing, but what's really interesting and exciting is that the traditional foundations are beginning to realize that they need to bring forward a new generation. And so there is support available.
So how does someone even, really access that and know how to present them? Because having seen some, there's quite a formality process that can be involved, right? So how do they find out how to plug into that?
There's two ways. Number one, there's the Foundation Center, and they have a directory, and it's listed by disciplines. And so going to their directory and saying, okay, who's funding art? For example, the Doris Duke Foundation, big art funders. But then it's also splitting it into areas like with the symphony, as you suggested, and going in through that door with a piece of digital art. And perhaps getting support that way. So there are ways to do it, but as you say, people have to think differently, and they have to expand. At the endowment, we have a relatively new chairman, Rocco Landsman. He changed the tagline to Art Works, and it's all about not just the artwork and art working to strengthen society, but also that artists need to get paid.
Yeah. And so, two questions. One, what type of things are they looking to help fund? And two, what is your annual budget to do that?
Okay, our annual budget at this point is at about $165 million. However, depending on what happens next week, it could be 146.
Yeah, of course.
Or it could be zero.
Yeah.
And that gets into the question of advocacy and artists as advocates, but that's a different session.
So that's actually it's not, because I've got 300,000 artists that would be happy to send an email off.
Exactly.
And art
or fax or repeated faxes.
American for the Arts. Americans for the Arts, and there's Arts Advocacy Day coming up in April, which I think I'm probably not supposed to talk about because
well, that's okay, because in general, you're speaking to antidotes that are not commonly known, not commonly people are even aware of. I was 40 before I even became aware that opportunities like that existed and never pursued them.
Yeah. And that's exactly why we're here. And I'm the director of media arts, but I'm and I've only been there 2 months, and I'm sort of spreading, throughout the agency. And, for example, talking to them about interactive theater via Skype, talking to them about, digital exhibitions, talking to them about, we're going to be funding games, we're going to be funding online only. We're moving past just traditional radio and television.
It's nice to hear the reality that the digital arts are becoming legitimized.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great.
Do we have time for one more question? Yeah, I think we do.
Yay.
Nice, cool. There, cool. Proof. You had a question, please.
So you're just talking about as individual artists, to concentrate on our brand, our personal brand, and moving ourselves forward. And that's, why I'm here. That's exactly where I am in my life. And I don't expect my struggles to be unique, but it's like, where do I put my time? Because I need health insurance. I need to make a salary. I made the personal decision for myself not to have my own business right now because that it just wasn't working for me right now. Yeah. I'd like that sometime in the future, but I'm struggling to learn as much as I can as quickly as possible. I didn't go to art school. I went to liberal arts because I made that decision. I was like, no, I need to be well-rounded, and I don't regret that, but now I'm playing catch-up. And I had a very traditional print education. So any other advice or secrets or experiences to
go ahead, Jason.
How you did it, or is it just...
I can tell you.
You put yourself out there.
You have a job right now, right?
Yeah.
Everything you do at that job is not going to be what moves you forward except the learning portion. That's delivering for someone else.
Well, and allowing you to have the income to be able
to do the rest.
Support yourself. And that's the thing, is you don't have to. You're not going to do what you really want to do at the beginning. Just
every single thing that I've built myself has all been built in my own time outside of that which paid the bills. Conceptart.org got built on a weekend after 6 months of hopping around on Saturdays and meeting other artists and connecting with people. And I should put all these people together. And then the art department got built on top of running Conceptart.org and Massive Black full time, and then eventually I was able to hire people to replace me at Massive Black, which is essentially the same as leaving your other job, so you can focus on what you want to focus on. But it's just like that in anything you do. Everything you do outside of the normal 8 hours a day is what's going to get you there. And if there's anything in there that you can cut out. Cut that out. Cut that out, and do the things on that list that you could make of all the goals.
So
you'll
in
get
that
there.
spare time, there's so many things I could be spending that time doing. It could be the skills, the creating, the networking. Is it
submerging yourself in the environment in any way possible?
So to that point is finding out who the connected communities are, right? And it's really just ideas and web searches away that are more in your specific area, because there are a lot of people. There are so many connected groups in this world, we can't really even measure them all. And so there's someone out there, there's groups out there that are in the space that you would like to be in.
They'll help you.
And they will. It's actually, humans are, in general, pretty good. Right, and the global community of being connected has reduced a lot of the awkwardness of just making yourself known or knocking on a door. It's made it a little easier for those things.
Yeah, you can Google.
One good thing that will help you get connected with some of those people. Tomorrow night at the Mohawk, we are throwing a big party. It's called Chroma. There's going to be lots of live painting and all kinds of crazy
these
stuff.
Guys' parties
lots
are
of
worth
artists
checking out.
So you guys should all come. It's free. I had to do that.
Yeah, it's totally free.
But seriously, it is really a great way to meet all of us.
We've held these big shows all over the country and all over the world, really. So Europe and Asia and all around. And now we do it for fun. So
if you check that out, you'll see some great art being made. But also, to your point, and I guess as a roundup, because we've got to wrap it up, is any job that you can get. I watched, and I'm sure, Rick, through the age of, you've seen a million people go, oh, this job is selling out. Oh, that's not really the real thing. Oh, that's a mechanical artist, whatever, right? Any job that's sharpening any aspect of your skills that can pay the bills while you continue to learn. My story is very much like Jason's. Any business I built was built in the after hours while I was working another job. And those skills, just like, okay, these are paying the bills. That's what they are. But they're not my destiny, so I'm going to use that bill-paying energy in all the right ways, but I have to spend some extra effort because I'm one of those rare people, I'm an artist who wants to actually do for a living what I love. And that, anyone who wants to do that, it's a slightly harder path, and then the rewards can be better because you're actually doing what you love.
And just remember that as an artist, your time is as valuable as you say it is. So taking a job bartending or waiting tables at $8 an hour or $6 an hour or whatever is only valuable if you couldn't be using that time to go out and find a client that'll pay you $40 to $60 an hour. You could spend 2 days or 2 weeks looking for that, but hopefully you're going to land a gig that's going to pay you hourly that would make up for 3 weeks waiting tables. So just remember, you want to split your energy between the things that's going to make you money, but also the thing that's really going to make you money.
As an artist, before you can move forward, you've got to have a great portfolio. If it's a company, it's a great product idea and a prototype. You've got to have that thing that you go around and sell the idea with, your pitch kit, and then it's a matter of networking and research and just relentless chase. If you're an artist and you want to be successful, at least 20% of your day should be pushed towards business development, whether it's writing grants for some project, or trying to get writing for grants, or applying, emailing art directors, you name it.
Promoting yourself.
You are your portfolio.
But you're giving in the community is part of it. Part of it, because you find those communities that are niche, that are the thing you want to do, and you give and you work and you grow and you show in there, you become industry known. They watch it happen. You become a star within the community, and this following and respect, and that. And
introductions that lead to work and more connection.
People appreciate you.
Everyone's bigger if they're more connected to more people that can share. And
I'll just add one final thought, and that is that, because a lot of artists are introverted, and they don't necessarily want to go out and promote themselves. I know I have a lot of students who come into the school and want to just sort of do their craft, and not necessarily. You have to learn to promote yourself. You have to be passionate and confident about what you are, because that is about the brand you.
Yeah.
And that'll just get you fired, eventually laid off. Yeah, so you've got to do it. If there's something that keeps you from wanting to talk to people, or you got to work through it. You have to have good people skills. It's the thing that will save your.
Yeah, people prefer genuine over slick.
And my final note is when. Oftentimes, if I can't find an artist, I'll go to a headhunter. The headhunter will want to spend face time, want to make an introduction to the artist, want to show me a resume. All I want to see is a link. I want to see their work. If they're an artist, that's all I care about first. If that link gets me interested, then I'm more interested in the person. If that link does not impress me for what the needs are, I'm not ever meeting the person. So, Rick, Jason, Jaclyn, thank you very much for being here.
Lorne.
Everyone, thanks for showing up.
Thank you for coming out.
Thank you, everybody.